15. And the meeting is being recorded, so you'll be able to share with others as we go forward. I'm Roxanne Miles with Pierce County Parks, but more importantly, I'm the legislative chair for WRPA. And so I'll be doing some of the presentation here, but some of it's also being provided by Jennifer and Trevor. If you all would like to introduce yourselves.
Trevor? Good. All right, I'll hop in. Nice to see you all. Trevor Justin, contract lobbyist for WRPA. Obviously you all were well represented by Doug Levy. He has stepped out at the end of the year from lobbying, so happy to be working with you all, and yeah, looking forward to today and looking forward to Great Outdoors Day on February 1st, and looking forward to discussing our issues today. So nice to see you all.
Jennifer Wills, Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Longview, incoming president for WRPA. Not sure how I got wrapped up in legislative stuff, but having fun with it, and so excited to teach you what we've been working on.
Perfect. And again, thank you all for taking your time, joining us, and being so interested in this topic. And we will do our best, because Bob wants to know how I'm going to get him some more money. So hopefully we are successful in this, and everyone here can get a little piece of the pie if we're able to carve it out. I mean, one of the things is, I think many of us have turned to RCO, the Recreation and Conservation Office, and there's been a long-standing history around capital projects and being able to pursue capital funding. But one of the shared woes that we all have that always gets talked about is this concept of deferred maintenance. And the fact that the legislature actually entertain more of that conversation with some state agencies, we saw as a great opportunity to join in this conversation. And I don't know how many of you recall earlier in the year, and especially right after COVID, we've had some surveys that have gone out in order to collect some data about how our systems are faring. And one of the things we did is we grabbed hold of a definition that we saw the state successfully using for deferred maintenance, and wanted to try to consistently apply it to the best of our ability across our system. And this will hopefully help us be a little bit more consistent about how that term gets used and gets talked about as we go forward to encourage the legislature to provide more resources that would help us with maintenance and operations backlog, and compared to just new capital projects. And we know that, you know, new projects sometimes are a renovation. It's an improvement on something we already had in the system, but we also have a lot of aging infrastructure, and it comes up to that time that it's reached the end of its life. So for this discussion, and hopefully it can be reinforced in your local conversations or discussions that you might sign up to have with the state, is that the deferred maintenance backlog, we defined it as things that have been postponed at least 1 year beyond the end of the life cycle of that asset. So if it was supposed to last 20 years and then should be in your replacement cycle, and you haven't been able to do that, or because you couldn't do that replacement, you just pulled it out and now your system is doing without it, that's the type of thing that we're really trying to elevate in this conversation to their attention. So not new capacity, not new growth, just trying to take care of what we have and keep it in the system for our public, or replace it in a timely way so it's safe. So many have scheduled replacement cycles. I know we all have varying degrees of methods to track the condition of life cycles or what age it is. And we appreciate that everyone used the tools at their disposal to come up with estimates, put that into the survey, and help us to be able to generate this list. Okay? As this conversation goes forward, we want to make sure we're really clear that this really is the replacement of these old assets because of some things that have happened to us in the industry, over the last couple of years, because right now the legislature really is focused on one-time dollars, things that have happened due to the pandemic. So while we all might have a large backlog, what we are saying is that the pandemic made it worse, right? We had issues when it came to contracting holds, staff and supply chain issues. We weren't able to move forward with the improvements in 2020 and 2021 on the same schedule we would have otherwise. So that's an important piece of the story, because we don't want them walking away figuring that somehow the local agencies are trying to make the state completely responsible for M&O, or that we just aren't taking care of our assets at all. This really is a call to get some resources to help us chip away at something that has happened over the last course of the last couple of years. You know, the one thread as WRPA that we try to put in everything we talk about them is that we provide such regular daily access that is close to home. They know the state's deferred maintenance backlog number because they see it all the time, and the state has been presenting to it all the time. So this is our chance to give them a similar case for support, and to do it in a way that reminds them that we serve far more people in a much more equitable way close to home, and why these assets are so very important to making sure that everyone can recreate, everyone can get the health benefits of our trail system and our park system, and to do those things in enough of a frequency that it actually gets all the benefits that they want. So this really is saying our industry is just as critical as everything else that you have put aid into. Parks and recreation is a necessary thing when it comes to our economic return and the return to health for our communities. So making sure we as a sector are given the same type of direct aid and responsibility here in response to the pandemic and some of the trauma and challenges that our communities have gone through, and that it's put us behind a little bit, and we need a chance to catch up. Okay. So some broad overview, and Trevor is going to talk to you about the status of the request, and then Jen's going to take you kind of deeply into some of the tools that we've made available that capture some of the points that I just shared and goes a little bit deeper. So if you have questions at any time, drop them in the chat. And then after, in between different things, we'll use that opportunity to answer those questions and catch up a little bit. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Trevor.
Thanks, Roxanne. Thanks for that overview. As Roxanne mentioned, I'll just want to kind of chat about status of sponsors of our $5 million M&O request. And then just kind of large picture, kind of what the budgeting process looks like, because it can be a little bit convoluted. So first and foremost, we have great sponsors championing our request this legislative session. In the House, we've been working really closely with Representative Ryu and Representative Barkis. They're the two co-chairs of the Outdoor Recreation Caucus, kind of an informal caucus in Olympia. And then over on the Senate side, Senator Nobles and Senator Mazzal, also the two Senate counterparts in the Outdoor Recreation Caucus, will also be sponsoring those. So that's great news. Representative Ryu and Senator Nobles will likely have their names on first, and then co-sponsors Barkis and Mazzal as well. So that is great. I can't think of 4 other legislators that would be better served to sponsor this request, given that they're such big champions for the outdoors, and they're their caucus's leads on kind of all these outdoor recreation works. So that's great. We've been in close communication with them, and again, we'll be continuing to work with them on this ask. Our first outdoor recreation caucus meeting will be 7 a.m. this week, so looking forward to that. And again, we'll chat with folks and make sure this issue is high on all the other stakeholders' radar as well. I've actually gotten a decent amount of outreach from other cities saying, we support this request. So having some good conversations with other stakeholders and legislators as well. We are asking this to be a one-time request. kind of got some feedback from legislators that would be our most feasible route to try and be included in the budget this year. For those of you that don't know, state has to balance their budget. We operate in 2-year budget cycles, but the state has to balance their budget over a 4-year period. So if we asked for a $5 million ongoing, that'd look like a $10 million in the 4-year outlook, and then 20 in the next outlook, and yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So wanted to go at this for a one-time request to start. Of course, we can always revisit that down the line, but that is our ask for this biennium. Steps to the budgeting process. So as you all likely know, governor always releases his budget prior to legislative session in December. The governor did that. We were not expected to be in the governor's budget, and we're not, but not to panic, because the legislature will continue to work on their budgets. They'll get a revenue forecast in March, and then they will release their budget proposals around that middle of March, end of March timeframe. We're in a long 105-day session, so legislature will be in session until I think April 23rd is the last day. So governor released his proposal in December. The legislature had public hearings on those, but now conversations kind of really go behind closed doors, so to speak, and legislators work with their caucuses on a budget proposal that they want to release to the public in March. So a lot of these conversations will continue to be ongoing. Great Outdoors Day is perfect timing that we can discuss with a lot of legislators. February 1st, hey, legislators, we really need this funding in your budget. We hope to see this in both the Senate and House proposals that will be released in March. And then let me just speak briefly on language. Worked on some specific budget proviso language with the Recreation and Conservation Office, who will be deploying the funding if we receive that. So I've been in close communication with them, and then with Representative Ryu, some House Democrat caucus staff that helps out with the budget, and others. So working closely on that, and that's going well also. So that's kind of the high level budget overview. I'll pause there if there's any questions, but that's kind of the long and short of it. All right, you guys are taking it easy on us so far. I appreciate that.
So you're saying next steps for folks, once we give them this information, they should sign up for February 1st so they can then talk about this information.
Absolutely. Great plug.
Yeah, that's
great
what we're
plug.
looking for.
I know it's a shameless plug, but it does make a difference and really talking to legislators on our Great Outdoors Day, and really kind of mentioning this $5 million M&O request will be extremely important. So we want to come out in full force, and hopefully a lot of you all sign up and have your other colleagues sign up in other districts, and really put a strong foot forward to talk to these, because we have good legislators on the agenda, and they're really important, and they're the decision makers, right? So definitely want to have a lot of folks sign up for that. And yes, good point, Mary, in the chat. Virtual legislative day on February 1st, so all virtual. And then the in-person portion at the governor's mansion on February 2nd for the reception. So
maybe I missed it, but how are the funds accessed?
Great question, Bob. It's the language we're working on. It's a needs-based assessment, and that's what we're kind of honing in on with RCO on. What does that mean, right? But it's for maintenance and operations. It's a needs-based grant program, so no sort of matching or anything. Obviously, our need is much greater than 5 million, right? We surveyed our membership, and our deferred maintenance backlog is closer to 725 million statewide. From talking to you all, I think we had about 65% of our parks fill out that survey. That's how we got to that $725 million number. Legislature just doesn't have that funding, right? And it's not, quite frankly, it's not the state's responsibility to pay for all of this, right? But obviously we were hampered during COVID-19, and you all run a lot of fee-based programs in your parks and everything, and those just got smoked for a couple of years. So asking the state just to kind of give us an assistance in this 5 million. Department of Natural Resources and Fish and Wildlife for state parks and Fish and Wildlife, they got this one-time 5 million funding last year. So we're just asking that local parks get the same treatment in this biennial cycle. Does that help, Bob?
How much per entity?
Another good question. So we're asking for 5 million. What we view that for is kind of $50,000 to $100,000 in grants, depending on who applies, right? What the projects are. So it's not going to be a ton of money, right? Obviously, that's why the WWRP programs are so important, right? We all still want you to apply for those grants and try and seek funding through that. But this is really just trying to help clear some sort of backlog that you may have experienced over the last couple of years due to COVID, just to kind of help out on some of those projects. Is that helpful?
Very helpful. So it's going to be a grant-based, competitive, but
Needs-based, yep.
only 50 to 100,000. That still allows a lot of entities to participate. So that's good.
Yep. Thanks for the questions, Bob. Appreciate it. All right, I will kick it over to Jennifer, because I think she's got the next portion.
Before she dives in, because she's going to show you great pictures, she's going to be the best part of this whole thing, is remember, we have to first get them to reserve this money, right? So I know a lot of people are interested, like, how do we access and what it will look like? Some of this will be the language that we will be crafting. We're giving you the concept there, but as it goes through the process, there might be some terms based on this data that we're sharing that get added to the language in order for it to pass through. So some of that is going to become the direction that RCO inherits. And, you know, because this is one-time money, they're going to need to turn around very quickly to then get it up and allow people the chance to compete. So, you know, we want everybody on board, but it won't be a pot of funds unless we really work with them to get it to go through and make sure that what we're stating resonates with them about why the state should be making this investment. And Jen's got all the language now.
One other quick point, Roxanne, great background, needs-based money, right? But equity and inclusion will also be huge, right? That's gonna be an important piece to a lot of these projects, and a lot of our talking points with legislators are that's an important piece to this. So just wanted to flag that as well.
All right, now all things color. So we put together, can you see my screen? Give me a thumbs up, Roxanne. Yep. Okay, perfect. So we put together some documents that should be able to help you guys kind of showcase what we have been up to. So obviously, you know, you took that survey, we got all of your information, and we have 70,000 acres that we maintain. That's more than DNR, that's more than state parks. I mean, we maintain more land than the state funding does. And we serve over $130 million visits annually. And so that's a lot of people. And so we're making a huge impact. And so what we're asking for is like a hand up, not a hand out. So this is just to move us forward through that process to get us going a little bit quicker. So we did that survey. We had 63% of our folks take the survey, and we extrapolated that to about 100%. And we saw that we were 725 million in deferred maintenance. And so that's anything that's, I think, Roxanne, over a year outside of its life cycle. And so we broke that into categories, and you'll see that between parking lots, playgrounds, picnic tables. And so that's extrapolated throughout the state as to what that looks like for each of our assets. And so our request for support is that $5 million. We have to get through that kind of hump first before we move forward asking for 50 to 100,000. But that would be able to touch a lot of our folks in our local areas. And so the second one kind of gives you a bit of a kind of comparison to what's happening on the state level. So 71% of our folks are using RCO grants to do a lot of their projects. And so a lot of these capital projects aren't already happening without our partnerships with state organizations. I mean, we rely on those grants, those donations. So it's not specifically right now coming from our local area. And so this would also be in addition to that. And then so 89% of park providers experience reduced ability to manage, maintain, operate, or secure their parks, especially during the pandemic, when we saw that our needs were as great. And so as we continue, let me pull my up here. So we need to talk about kind of a triple whammy, I think is what Roxanne had called it. But one, parks are our most external facing parts of our local government. So they are the curb appeal of our area. It's what first time what people see. So if you're a new business owner, a new homeowner, you drive around your town, you see parks. We want to make sure they are safe, accessible, and available to all. And so we didn't see a lot of our fee-based programs and festival events happening. So we lost a little bit of revenue there during COVID. And then federal funding for restoration of other, I'm running through Roxanne's awesome information. So but we have this infographic. These are great. This is good to get in front of our local legislators, but we also have our talking points. And so we did put together a 2-page that talks about our request, and it goes into a little bit of a deeper dive. So we talk about how COVID took a significant toll, bringing increased demand. I don't think anyone here would say that we didn't see an increased demand. Our ADA backlogs continue to be severe. Local parks are able to provide for equity and accessibility like no other. We do that as a whole anyways. And so if we can continue to make something for everyone, it can be for anyone. Natural environment, when you look at the health risks that we had and the mental, spiritual, emotional, all of those things, when parks folks hit going to parks during that time. And then as we grow as a state, we're losing land for homes. And so these public spaces become that much more important to ensure that we are accessible and have access to green space. And then we are economic and tourism engines. And so from there, we just need to ensure that that's what's bringing people to our local area. It's what's bringing people to our state. And it's what's creating connection in our community. Anything else with regard to that? I mean, this has also been attached to the invite if you had gotten that, and I'm happy to email anyone all of this information as you go and you talk to our legislators. So Roxanne, anything I missed?
Mm-hmm. So, some of this, hopefully it's helpful to you that we captured all of this, because one of the main things for the legislators, right, is helping them feel like there's a responsibility to the local park systems, and that's not just something that they see the state benefit from that, and not something that they're leaving to the local jurisdictions to figure out on their own. And so these issues are creating a little bit of an urgency. And again, hopefully you're finding the touch points. This tool really has collected those storylines for you, but as we're going to share, closely, you don't have to have this memorized or know all this stuff per se, but the magnitude of how many Washingtonians are recreating on our lands, in addition to state lands, is really the important kind of walk away from this and as a talking point. But what's going to probably move the meter with your legislator, or even maybe your local council, to agree to have this on their legislative agenda, or allow you to testify, and maybe even help you get more resources in your own budget, is to be able to see how this could really make a difference in the backyard, in the place. And I think more and more that equity and access has come to light, and there's a lot of studies and a lot of charges, and there's a lot of members of the legislature where that resonates with them. And for those who are less talking about equity and access right now, they are talking about economic recovery, right? They're talking about smart investments. So hopefully this gives you both sides of that coin to talk through and to make it as personal as possible. I would say those of you who contributed to the survey, it's been a while, but I still have the story map link, and it's living on Metro Parks Tacoma's server. And if it's helpful for you to be able to show an area where you are showing a real spike of use or a greater need than maybe others, that is something that, in addition to this tool, could help really equip you with your legislators' support for this initiative, because this really is legislator by legislator. which is going to get it advanced in the process. On that, guess with that, Jen and Trevor, if you want to talk about really the individual meeting and that individual approach of telling the story effectively.
You want me to kick it off, Jen? Okay. So what's most impactful for you all talking to your legislators? It's the personal stories, right? And not so much your personal story, right? But your park's personal story. Because folks are going to ask, okay, let's say you get a $50,000 grant. What are you going to do with it? You get a $100,000 grant. What are you going to do with it? I'm here to talk big picture with these folks every day, but you all are really the ones on the ground that see this stuff, right? And you see the maintenance backlogs and you really know what the need is. So having some specific examples of state, if you fund this 5 million M&O request and my park receives $75,000 grant, this is what I'm probably going to do with it. And again, you don't have to be wedded to that, right? If you speak to that in the meeting, that's the project you have to do, but just want to give legislators some real flavor, some real world example of this is a difference you're going to make. You know, I can upgrade that bathroom that we've been trying to fix. We've been trying to get repaired or get upgraded for the last 2-3 years, right? We can make progress on that bathroom. We can make progress on that ramp, you know, any sort of ADA compliance issues is compelling, right? We got that on the one pager. And again, a lot of this is tied back to COVID, right? You guys lost a lot of revenue while demand in parks skyrocketed. So any specific examples you all can provide, this is like, you know, these are the 2 or 3 things on our short list that we just haven't been able to get done because we don't have the funding for it. Providing those real world specific examples. And a lot of times legislators might know the exact parks you all are talking about, right? They know their districts well, they know where things are at. So, you know, tell them, you know, at this park, this is what we're looking to do. At this recreation area, this is what we're looking to do. So that's really how you all can be impactful, because hopefully in 12 months, 18 months, 24 months that you can talk with your legislators again and say, hey, I remember we talked about that M&O funding. Look what we did with that money, you know? So that's really how you all can be impactful on legislative day. Jen, anything to add there?
Yep, I was going to say similarly. So we're talking about maintenance and operations, deferred maintenance. And so let's say normally maybe you contract with an arborist to come through and do trees in your area, and you weren't able to do that either. You couldn't afford it. And so now your trees need some additional work. This money isn't used to supplant a position that you already have, but it can be for deferred contractual work as well. So it doesn't need to be, we're looking at it being as broad as possible. And so when you're talking about those asks, make sure that you're looking for those specific projects that are be working in your area. Because I mean, things were deferred. We didn't do things for quite a bit of time until we got back into stuff. And so I would say, yeah, if you could come with 1 or 2 projects, it would be amazing if you can continue to hit on anything that's ADA or accessible, which is a great focus. That should be to speak. But if your legislators know about this ahead of time, when it does come up, it's easier for them to kind of wrap their brain around it, which is the reason we want to talk to them.
Any questions on that front from anybody? Great. Any questions in general on any of this or Great Outdoors Day or anything? Feel free to shoot them at us.
Let me just add to that point of, I think you see the points of emphasis, you know, choose programs that can line up with this and that would help make the case. You know, when you're looking at all your projects, which you probably have many, one, here's the advantage, right? You've actually prepared yourself for the grant application where it comes out. And if you're looking at an area of town that isn't being served, or an ADA issue, you know, that maybe you did or didn't have scheduled, the more you're able to really tie it to these elements of need, it'll help them really understand why this bucket is very important. And then you've also picked projects that is likely going to fit with the criteria we see coming out on the other side of it. You know, Mary, to your point, we've had conversations, and you know, we just all along have been saying M&O, M&O, M&O. And you know, to Jennifer's point, a lot of times folks see that in terms of a capital replacement. There could be some contracting that really helps, again, repair, sustain assets in your system. While technically at this point, you know, operations would fit under that umbrella, the fact that this is one-time money, we feel like it makes more sense to lobby around those very concrete fixes where folks who are only in session 2 years can know that they help make that possible and move on. If, as we're working with RCO, we see some opportunity to allow it to be a little bit more flexible, still in the terms of one time, that's where it might make sense to advocate to allow for some more operational support, but we don't want to confuse or mix messages in trying to get this stood up as a whole, if that makes sense. So, you know, hopefully you're all feeling comfortable with this topic. You know, too, that with Great Outdoors Day, and I think we're going to pop the link in the chat here for you. If you haven't already signed up and you're nervous about it, you know, you're going to be going in a group, and the other members of the group can likely talk about that big capital bucket. But the maintenance and operations really is a WRPA thing, right? It's not about land and water conservation or that big capital bucket. And so there's really kind of a sliver of time. And if you would like more support to be comfortable, you're really only going to be able to share the topic. If you get questions, concerns, or a desire for a follow-up from your legislator, I'd say that's when it's perfect timing to reach back to Trevor or myself and others who can really help with anything. So really it's an introduction to the conversation. It makes them really know how their community will benefit when it comes time for them to make the vote. So that's what's most important in this. We do see that this data can help beyond Ledge Day, but Ledge Day is one that is set aside for them to really recognize how valuable parks and the outdoor industry is to the economy and the quality of life. And so no better time to make sure everyone's getting that message across the board whenever possible to make that happen. So if you need anything in order to feel comfortable doing that, and also if you just need some more feedback about how well this tool is working or something that you need on your local level, let us know that as well. Any questions? We definitely want some Q&A time here. I know a lot of folks have been listening, but we want to listen as well.
It's a pretty unique opportunity to be able to have funding for stuff we already have. That doesn't usually happen. It's usually the new shiny toy. And so I think we can talk about what we have in our inventory and how the effort is to maintain that. I think it's going to go a long way. And if we do a good job with this, maybe deferred maintenance becomes something that we get to do in the future as we move forward, or maybe projects become either new enhancements or deferred. And so I think it's an opportunity if we speak to what we have going on and the impact that we have from our users and kind of the longevity of how long we've been doing what we've been doing and with what we're doing. I think it could be a good thing for the future.
Yeah, just to add to that too, we'll have a lot of meetings scheduled for this day, so we'll be able to get in front of a lot of legislators, and obviously we'll be working with our WWRP, WWRC partners. But yeah, just even just a quick mention of, oh yeah, you know, we really support that $5 million M&O ask for local parks. It'll be great to put this on a lot of legislators' lists, and of course we've been having a lot of meetings on it already, but just a nice little reminder in early February as budget negotiations continue between, budget writers and their caucuses, what their priorities are. It'll be really important to flag. So thank you in advance all for participating, and hope you can make it on that day, and looking forward to having a lot of good meetings and a good lunch panel at the 12:30 to 1:30 hour. We'll hear from our capital budget leaders and our outdoor recreation caucus as well on what their priorities are and what they're working on for the session. So should be a great day.
Jennifer, can you hear me? This is Chuck Hines from Anderson Island. Appreciate all the information. One of the questions I have is, how would you find out if you sort of qualified for any grant money? Is there going to be like a application sent out?
So you participated in SEEK funding, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so I have a feeling it's going to be something similar of that nature. So as soon as we get this money, I'm going proactive with that. But as soon
Right.
as that gets passed, or hopefully when it does, we will be working with RCO and doing a similar application. There'll be a deadline, and you'll fill out your needs-based request. And so that's how that would work once this goes through.
Okay, yeah, because initially I didn't think we would really have any use, but then I looked. One of the things we were looking to do is we have a marine park where we have washing the water trails used quite a bit, and people from the island and people coming over. And we were going to replace. We have a porta potty we put up there, but we were going to replace it with a composting toilet, which was like $25,000. And we had a lot of safety issues come up with a drowning in one of our parks this year from some other people. And so all of a sudden we said, well, we need to shift funds. We don't have a whole lot of maintenance money or, operation stuff. So we kind of deferred that and say, that's going to have to wait a couple of years. But, we've had washing water trails, wanting to donate some money towards it, and have a lot of people saying, wow, we love the park, but boy, if you get rid of that porta potty and put something nicer in there. And so I don't know if that's something that would qualify for that, or,
Yeah, Chuck, I can't imagine. I mean, that's kind of that's the goal of what we're trying to accomplish, right? Projects like that, where, to me, that's operations of improvement, right? So
Right.
it improves the operations of the park, and those are the exact kind of projects that we're hoping that this funding will cover. So
Okay.
we're trying to walk a fine line of, we want this broad base so you all can use it how you see fit, but we also want RCO to be able to get it out the door into your all's hands within
Right.
a couple year period. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind
we're
of
looking.
the fine line we're trying to discuss and hone in on.
So when would these funding become available if they're approved and all that? Is that like this coming summer?
Yeah, good question. So it'll be in the next biennial budget, which starts July 1 of 2023, and it will go to June 30 of 2025.
Okay.
That's the next 2-year budget cycle. And yeah, it'd take RCO a little bit of time to kind of get the forms and everything up and running. Fall or early next year, probably at the earliest, and funding would probably be doled out maybe in the summer of 24. So
Okay.
still a little ways out, but by middle of 2025.
Okay.
Well, again, thank you all for attending. And because we have you on this list, I think we should be able to capture it. I'm asking the WRPA, because as this moves through, one of the things Trevor has some weekly notes of where things are. So if it is advancing to the next hurdle or whatever, you'll be able to follow it moving forward. And, like I said, getting it across the finish line. So it actually is a charge that RCO has this money and needs to get it out for that likely 2024, because that's the 1-year funding and when they'd have that all together. The other thing I'd add is hopefully the tool, even though it was created around the maintenance, deferred maintenance and backlog, is some of the same points resonate true, right? If you're in Ledge Day, the conversation is both about all the grant programs that RCO does, plus this maintenance and operation. And it still sounds true, right? How many people we have utilizing our local park system, and the equity and access is why we need both the maintenance and as large a bucket as possible for WWRP. And I think most people on this line know, that the local parks category is the most oversubscribed. That line gets drawn and there's just as many underneath as there are above. And if the legislature, funds at 120 million, most of the categories are being satisfied except for local parks. So just speaking true to how important what you do is for your community. Have those examples of maintenance projects, but really talk about how many folks are reliant on your system to get out and recreate and can do it every day, as opposed to a weekend trip or a summer camp, once a year, that type of thing. So use those same points. And I think we'll all kind of raise the bar together and again, get that message out really clear of how important what we're doing to our local community. So those things like Chuck described can be happening even to a greater degree next summer from now. I did drop in the chat, those links I think are still active. If not, let me know. This was the original story map where everyone put the raw data. Again, it's only really probably helpful if you want to be able to manipulate and see your agency or your backlog number against the whole, but it is the tool we use to capture everything and come up with the need amount and the service amount that we've summarized in the documents that Jen went over. We will be sending those infographics out. So there you go. I see Jen just put that. If you need it, contact her. She'll get it to you directly. WRPA is also going to find a place to post that in the legislative section on their website. So that tool's there and available to you. With that, last call.
Let's say, and similarly, if you join this call and you haven't been getting my inundation of emails, please feel free to send me your email and I will add you to my distribution list. Some people I think got forwarded this meeting's request.
Perfect. All right. Thank you all. We really appreciate your time. Again, Trevor, Jennifer, and I are available to you. Look forward to working together with you on the effort and helping each other out.
Thank you for all your work on this. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good one.
Thank you, Roxanne.